Welcome to New Stripe City, a YouTube channel for die-hard Bengals fans. I'm your host, Ace Boogie, and I have along, once again, my good guy, John Fortune, here to recap the Bengals and Redskins. John, let them know who you are for those who may not have heard our stuff the last time, and let them know where they can find your stuff as well.
What's going on? This is your man, John Fortune, your host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. You can find me on YouTube under the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. You can find me on Facebook under John Fortune. You can find me on Instagram under John Fortune 318, and you can find me on Twitter under John E Fortune.
Perfect. So I know we kind of talked about what we were looking forward to and having happen in this game. The game has happened, and from my standpoint, I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like you guys won in terms of the starters versus the starters. And I say that because you look at what we did on offense. Our offense, I think both teams kind of had a sloppy beginning, but I think our offense, in particular, our offensive line, had a lot of penalties, right? A lot of false starts, a lot of holding calls, and things of that nature. And then we also had the big turnover in the red zone against you guys where Deron Payne literally deflected the ball and your safety took it probably 90-plus yards for a touchdown. And one thing that I noticed was that Andy Dalton just seemed kind of shook there. So although we ended up winning the game, in my opinion, I don't really feel like we won it because when the starters were in, to me it seemed like the Redskins kind of had the advantage. John, what were your thoughts on the game in particular? Was it the same feel for you, or with you being on the flip side, what did you think?
To be honest, I think both our defenses did pretty well, being as though who was in there. The first thing I'm going to say is that, to me, it was a crappy first quarter. I mean, you're talking about 4 minutes into the game, and there was no movement due to all penalties on both sides. You know, there was, one thing that really got me, piqued my interest was this new offensive pass interference call. It just seems like such a bizarre call. So, like I said, the first quarter, you're talking about in the first quarter, there was 11 penalties and 115 yards. That's the whole first quarter for both teams. So, the game didn't really get started until the second quarter when all the starters were gone. You know what I'm saying? So, it was just one of those things where, Monte Nicholson, he had a defensive touchdown and he had to pick. But one thing I will say is that I did notice with Andy Dalton, he throws a low ball. Have y'all ever noticed that he throws a very straight line ball? He doesn't arc it that much.
Yeah, I would probably say we've noticed in the past that he's had quite a few of his passes tipped before. And on that play, it looked like he actually made the right read. The pass was just too low. There was no arc on it.
Right. Like I said, again, I personally feel that our offense didn't look that well either. Case Keenum, to me, again, I just don't understand why we brought this guy in. To me, I felt that the guy we should have brought in was Tyrod Taylor, who's backing up Phillip Rivers in San Diego. Because I feel that if you bring in a young guy, you should bring in a guy who's kind of like his equivalent or somebody who can help him, who has a different skill set to really help him improve on that skill set he doesn't have. And to me, Tyrod Taylor was the better fit versus Case Keenum. And to me, I feel that if a team gives up, if a team is willing to sit up there and basically take on the rest of his salary just to get rid of him, there has to be something wrong with the guy.
Right. I feel like you guys were kind of in a desperate situation when you guys had to go and get him. From my observations of the Redskins, that defense over there looks nasty, and I meant to touch on this when we first talked. You guys got a couple of guys, because I'm really heavy into the draft. You guys have a couple of guys that I actually wanted in the draft over there. You talk about a Jonathan Allen, you talking about a Deron Payne, even a Tim Settle. The depth over there is crazy. You also talked about Ryan Kerrigan and Montez Sweat. I definitely noticed a very stout defensive line that way. I felt like our defensive line also played pretty good. You talk about Sam Hubbard. You talk about Wynn, who came in the second team. I think that they did pretty well. But, man, I was honestly kind of jealous after looking at you guys' interior line, and I just thought to myself the whole time, man, it's going to be tough for teams to run against you guys. And, Deron Payne just looks like a freak of nature. Like, how fast that guy was moving. He seems like, and I don't know, you're an actual Redskins fan. I don't know if he broke out yet, but if he hasn't broke out yet on a national stage, I feel like this year he is going to break out. That was my impression from you guys. In terms of offense, it was clear and evident to me that Adrian Peterson still has it. Outside of that, I mean, to me, Case Keenum didn't look bad. I think that you guys could do a lot worse than Case Keenum. But I felt like when the passes were there, he kind of made them. He made some good passes where he took advantage of our safety, Sean Williams. He took advantage of some of the linebackers. Another guy that I also followed close from the draft, he kind of got in a little bit later, Jeremy Sprinkle. I was also familiar with him. I actually mocked him to the Bengals a few years ago. So it was nice to see some of those weapons that you guys do have. But I will say, to me personally, I would say that the defense, to me, stood out more than your offense. Not saying that that's a bad thing, but that defense, I believe Rex Ryan went on air and said that he thinks that you guys have a shot at being better than the Jacksonville Jaguars defense. I would almost kind of be there with him, especially seeing that you guys also have Landon Collins being added to that team. So it was interesting to me that even though Jay Gruden is an offensive-minded coach, he's clearly invested in that defense over there.
I told you in our last show, for me, our defense is going to be the thing that leads us all the way through. No matter what goes on, because, again, you're talking about just the three down linemen, Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, and Matt Ioannidis. They all, like Matt Ioannidis had 7 sacks last year. Jonathan Allen had 8, and Deron Payne had 5. So you're talking about 20-something sacks between just 3 guys. Right. Not to mention that Ryan Kerrigan had 13 last year. Right. So just on that defensive line alone, you're talking about they're going to generate so much pressure on teams when it comes just from the offensive line. From the defensive line. Now, if you paid attention also, our linebackers are mean and they're quick. John Bostic was in on a lot of plays. The only thing that I had an issue with, but again, I think that they weren't really scheming that much for the game. But I noticed you guys tight ends like Drew Sample. Mm-hmm. He looks good. I think you guys may have found somebody. I think you guys may be a little concerned about that because you guys actually got 4 tight ends. Because Tate looked good as well. That was a shock to me because it seemed like you guys' offense is going somewhere. It's going in a manner of getting more plays to your tight end instead of getting it to the outside while AJ Green is out.
Believe it or not, Auden Tate is very big. He's actually a wide receiver. But there's been a lot of talk about people wanting him to switch to tight end. But Auden Tate for us has been a guy that's been very consistent as of late. We brought him in. I think he was a 7th-round pick 2 years ago. And he's just a guy that has a knack in the red zone. He's a guy with sure hands. He's a guy that's clearly on the way up. Like, he started out I think 2 years ago, being a guy who came in with those third stringers, and it was like, oh, this is a guy that would be nice. He needs to make the roster, and he kind of would always be on the roster bubble, but I feel like now he's kind of ascended to that second to possibly even first team, especially with AJ Green being out, being a guy that can come in as a rotational guy. So it was no shock for Bengals fans once they saw Auden Tate get in there on the goal line that he could make a play in the red zone. Because to be honest with you, outside of Tyler Boyd. Josh Malone is also a guy sitting. You probably saw him make a couple of catches. Auden Tate's right there. I mean, you had John Ross. He's the first round pick, of course. He caught all the touchdowns. I would make an argument to say that Auden Tate is actually more sure-handed than John Ross, but he's going to be a guy that could, come out of nowhere. And if you're a fantasy football player and somebody like that, and you're looking for a guy to monitor, possibly to pick up until AJ Green gets back, that's going to be scoring some touchdowns here and there, I would look into Auden Tate. He's actually a pretty big sleeper. But you made a good point too as well. I liked what we saw with Drew Sample. A lot of our fans were taken back that he was picked in the second round because we were kind of scratching our heads because we have pretty good depth at tight end with Tyler Eifert and CJ Uzomah. So for us to take a tight end that high kind of shocked a bit of people. But the one thing that I can say is last week was a bad week for Sample before we played you guys. And when we played you guys, he showed more moxie and he showed more of his hands and things of that nature. So that was also a good thing that I saw as well. Let me ask you this, because I don't like to have any home bias, and I'll try to do the same for you. What players outside of Sample and Tate for the Bengals stuck out to you when you watched them?
Go ahead.
I was just asking your opinion on which Bengals, in your opinion, kind of stood out outside of Auden Tate and Drew Sample.
Well, Pratt, he actually looks pretty good too. He was quick to the ball. I mean, because there were a couple times where he just shot out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, so this is the guy that Ace was talking about. So yeah, he looks very, very stout. I also like the little running back, Flowers. He didn't look bad. He looked like he might actually be something for you guys. His vision is incredible, though. Like, he had one play where he took it to the side and then found a way to come back towards the middle. I think that if he had gotten one more block, he might have broke that play. Right. He was really, really good and really impressive. Like I said, I could clearly see he has great vision. So, I mean, those two really stuck out to me. You have a big cornerback. I can't remember what his name is, but he played pretty well also. I think he wore the number 23. I think it was
Darius Phillips.
Yeah. So he kind of stood out a little bit. So, and he's also your kick returner, right?
Yes. He has some pretty decent kick returners.
He kind of stood out a little bit to me because you guys may have a little sleeper guy there. But those are the three guys, like I said, again, along with Tate and Sample, they really stood out to me the most. I know you guys didn't have a lot of your starters in there. I think that a lot of teams are going to, the next game that's coming up is going to be one where you're going to see a lot of the real starters in. But, those are the two guys, Pratt and Flowers, actually really stood out to me along with Phillips.
One guy that I have to ask you about that kind of may have walked away with, from the Bengals fan standpoint as an MVP of that game, was the backup quarterback that we had in there. We actually just drafted him out of NC State this year. So he came in and he was the guy that threw the touchdown to Tate. I believe he also threw the touchdown to Sample. What were your thoughts on him?
Now, I saw, again, being in D.C., we get to see a lot of the ACC games, so I got to see a lot of Ryan Finley in college. I do think that he played well for y'all in the preseason game, but I'm going to be honest. Seeing him in college, he has this fidgety thing that he does that will kind of be something that you guys will want to watch if he ever comes in for Andy Dalton. He has this thing that when he gets pressure, he will make major mistakes. Again, it was shown a lot at North Carolina State because, again, like we got to see the ACC game, and he was one of the guys that when they were talking about the Redskins possibly drafting him, I was one of the ones that was like, absolutely no, don't draft this guy because he doesn't do well under pressure at all. I think it was, I'm trying to think of what game it was. I think it might have been NC State and I think it was Miami. I think it might have been Miami. But they pressured him.
Right.
And all he did was almost throw picks the whole game.
Wow.
So it was like almost unbelievable at how bad he was. But like I said again, I'm not saying that he's going to be awful for you guys. I think he may need some more development. But you guys will see, I guess, in this next game, if he does come in, you guys will see him when he's up against pressure, what type of quarterback he really is.
So that's interesting that you say that, because I think it was Kurt Warner actually said that he's been one of the best rookies. He had the best rookie performance so far this preseason. And in the last preseason game, he got in, but he didn't get in until it was like the third string. So he still went like 10 of 10 and things of that nature, but it was against the third-team offense. So for me, and I think for Bengals fans personally, we were really impressed with what he did when he came in, because I think our Bengals booth broadcaster said that he came out 9 of 10 against you guys, and the 10th one was actually a drop by the actual receiver. And what's crazy is that a lot of our fan base, and when we go back and look at the game and they were analyzing it, it looked like Andy Dalton was kind of matching what you were saying, where he was heavy pressured and there was a lot of nervousness from him. But Ryan Finley, in that game at least, he moved pretty well in the pocket. It seemed like he was pretty calm. It seemed like he was finding his targets. Honestly, I found almost nothing to say bad about him through these last two games. There's even been a very small segment in the fan base that actually wants to see him with the starters in. So that's interesting. That's interesting there. Were there any questions that you have for me in terms of the game?
Well, like again, what is your assessment of this offensive pass interference rule that seems to be this new rule where these receivers aren't able to attack the ball anymore?
Yeah, I definitely noticed I think the play that you were talking about, it was a deep bomb, I believe, and the defender didn't even see the ball coming. I think it was a Bengals defender, and your wide receiver made the play over the top of him, and they called like offensive pass interference. Is that the play you're talking about? Because there were a couple of them.
Two of them. Two of them. Yeah.
There was another one too. There was another penalty call where it was like your man Josh Norman against Giovanni Bernard, and I was like, that wasn't a flag. Like, honestly, that shouldn't have been a flag. But to me, I think that is obviously a problem. I think that they're overreacting to social media. I think that it's going to be a problem for the league. They're going to have to come down with a concrete way for them to do it, because not only did it happen against you guys, it also happened against one of our receivers when he caught a touchdown, and it ended up being called back. It's just a very slippery slope that does not make sense for the game. And I feel like people who have never played football before are making these decisions based on pressure from social media and pressure from fans, mainly those Saints fans who felt like they were gypped of a Super Bowl appearance. And I don't think that it's going to be good for the game. I think it's going to be a constant issue through this year. And I think that coaching staffs and players are going to have to understand, what they're going to be able to do. And I think it's a bad deal for the refs too, right? Ed Hockley's son had a rough night because we couldn't get anything off of the ground without flags coming out everywhere. So to me, it's definitely something that the league has to look into and kind of adjust. I kind of look at, the lowering of the helmet kind of thing last year, where it was flags being called on offensive players, and they had to adjust that midway through the season. I think you're going to see a similar thing. How about yourself?
Yeah, to me, I felt that the ref bullying penalty was something that I thought was just absolutely stupid, because that was the penalty that Josh Norman got, was the abuse. I think they called it the abuse to the ref or something like that, or whatever it was called. But it was just such a sensitive penalty, almost like, like in basketball, you tend to see the players go at the refs a lot. In football, you don't see them go at the refs a lot. So for there to be a ref bullying penalty, basically now in the league, it just seems pretty dumb.
Right.
And it seems almost sensitive. Now, in the sense of, like you said, when it comes to how they're putting all these rules into the game, I got to the point now where I feel like they're over policing the game to the point at where it's getting very, very soft.
Right.
You think about some of the, like, again, to me, I feel that there should be, like cornerbacks should be able to jam receivers at the line.
Right.
Again, to me, I don't feel that there's a such thing as a defenseless receiver. If he comes across that and he gets hit, understand he knew what he was doing when he was coming across that middle.
Right.
You can't take a lot of the tackling that these guys are used to doing, offensive pass interference. That to me, I felt was very, very fluky. Like I said, the official bullying call, I think that's a stupid penalty. I mean, there's so many penalties that I just, even when it comes to the holding penalty sometimes, there's sometimes that, I just think that officials are just missing stuff. And to your point, Ed Hockley's son, like, how in the hell did he become a head referee like that? Like, I mean, his dad retired, and all of a sudden, what? Is this the type of job that it goes to your kids after you retire? Like, that made absolutely no sense.
Yeah, man, I definitely agree with you as a person who grew up playing football, a person that grew up playing cornerback, where you're playing at a disadvantage immediately, especially when you go. I couldn't even imagine going against wide receivers that were 6'4", with 4.3s and 4.4 speed and not being able to put my hands on them in the first 5 yards. I mean, a lot of these rules that have been made, they've been made by people who have not played football before, and they've been made for the wrong reasons. I think one of the reasons, when you talk about defenseless receivers and things of that nature, I feel like that's a cover-up for them saying that they're taking steps to make sure that concussions don't happen and things like that. But to me, honestly, I think that's just a little bit of CYA there, in my opinion. I think people watch football for the physicality. If you take away the physicality, and this is a debate that's going out of here, this is why I debated with my friends that I said in the next 15 years, the NBA will overtake the NFL, and they're like, no, there's no way, it's not possible. And I say, I'm going to tell you why. Because the NFL, number one, they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they have the public image that they're not supporting players having concussions and things of that nature. So I said, eventually, they're going to be playing flag football, and nobody's going to want to watch that. Like, we want to watch football because of the big hits. We want to watch football because it's so physical. It's one of the most physical sports out there. You're hitting somebody every single play, and to try to make rules to change that, to avoid that from happening, is just stupid. Because these guys have been wired to, if a guy comes over the middle, you knock them down rather than letting them get by you and score a touchdown. I think another reason for the rule changes is that when you talk about how the defenders cannot touch them within, the first 5 yards and things of that nature, it's to allow for more points to be scored so that the games are more entertaining, because offense sells tickets. So for me, I think a lot of the moves that the NFL makes, number one, are for money. Number two, are for their public image. And I also feel like whenever they have issues like this, they do not handle them well. Whether it's kneeling, whether it's rule changes, whether it's anything. Like, I don't know who their disaster response team is, but they're failing. When you look across to the NBA and you look at Adam Silver, you see a person that sides with his players. You see a guy that's progressive, that thinks of things outside of the box to do. He's not afraid to institute them. You just look at what they did, like, for a prime example, the Pro Bowl. It's been an issue now for how many years? Guys don't even play in the Pro Bowl. They barely play. It's like flag football. And it's a hard sell. I live in Orlando. It's a hard sell every year. Nobody really cares about it. And they literally do nothing. You look at Adam Silver in the NBA, he decides, let's get rid of the Eastern and Western All-Stars because it's clearly lopsided, which was an issue that everybody knew. And what did he do? He changed the whole entire aspect of it. He made it so that the top 2 vote getters are able to select their own teams. It was actually televised last year. It made it a lot more interesting, and the NFL just does not do that. They don't handle things in a particular way. So for me, it takes the fun out of football, and it frustrates your players, it frustrates your consumers, and to me, it's just like, for what? Like, they're talking about eliminating kickoffs. Like, this is just honestly getting pretty ridiculous. And I'm sorry that I went off on a rant there, but...
No. It's all good because I actually agree with you. I told people the other day, in regards to football becoming more soft, the fans, I don't think they're going to convert to the NBA. I think they're going to convert to the NHL where physicality is almost celebrated. Right. Just to get that physicality, to get that physicality, just to see physicality again. I think that a lot of people are going to convert to the NHL because, again, you can't make a game extremely soft and it doesn't make any sense. Again, I personally feel that, like, this game is a good example. You can't you can't have 4 minutes of flags in the first quarter of the game. Like, the first quarter of the game, you're talking about in 4 minutes of that game, there was nothing but flags being thrown. You can't have a game you can't have a whole season where every game, 4 minutes of each and every game, there's nothing but flags being thrown. You're gonna immediately lose your fan base just off of that because they're like, hell, I'll just tune in the second half or the second quarter to start really looking at football.
Right. I totally agree with you, man. I think whether it's from, the little league level on up through high school to college to the pros, you can't just have a laundry list of flags out there because it affects the consumer's experience. It's like, let them play, refs. Come on. Because like you said, to your point, there could be holding called on every single play, right? It could be called literally on every single play. But the fact that they chose to call it so frequently is just ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. And like you said, you can't have games where the entire first quarter is a flag fest and you can't even get things off the ground. It takes teams out of rhythm. But one last thing I want to say is I feel like Dwayne Haskins had a bounce back game for you guys. What were your thoughts on how he played? Because that pass that he threw was beautiful. I think you know which one I'm talking about. It was like a deep bomb, hits the guy in stride, was almost sacked, right? Was almost sacked on the play, but stood up in the pocket and just let the cannon go. And it was just it was a thing of beauty. I was jealous of that too because I was like, man, that's an arm right there. If he can get those techniques and everything down and he can get consistent, maybe if it's not this year, I still think he sees the field this year, in my personal opinion, because we know what Case Keenum is, as you alluded to earlier. What are your thoughts on Dwayne Haskins?
Well, Dwayne Haskins, I've been preaching this for the longest. I personally feel he probably should be our starter going into week 1. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but to me, but this is exactly what I've been saying the whole time. I think the guy is not a really good practice player, but I think he's a guy that gets better as he plays. And to me, this is again what I said before, where as you can see from the first game, he was stumbling a little bit. The second game, he improved, which means that again, you're talking about a guy that you can clearly see that as he plays, he's going to be good. I'll give you an example. There was an Ohio State game, I think it might have been against Penn State, where in the beginning of the game, he was doing very, very bad. And I think Penn State ended up jumping on him really, really quickly. And I think that they ended up going, I think it was the score was like maybe 20-something to nothing or something like that. All of a sudden in the second half, he comes back and all of a sudden he marches them down the field and wins the game for Ohio State. So clearly that tells me that he catches, he understands when he's making mistakes, and he improves them immediately. So to me, I feel that if you sit up here, to me, I want to see him with the first team starter. I personally feel that he may be our starting quarterback, and we're trying to baby him along. You know, we didn't baby Robert Griffin III along, but we shouldn't baby this guy along either. You know, like, this should be a thing where we go ahead and say, you know what, this is the preseason. Let's put him in there with the starters and see what he can do. Terry McLaurin, clearly they're hiding this guy because this guy has been talked about all season. I went down to training camp. I saw him play. I mean, the guy's phenomenal. Clearly, they're hiding him from the NFL right now because I think in the Philadelphia game, they're going to break him out. And I think people are going to be shocked at what they get from Terry McLaurin because they're not putting him on the field at all this preseason, which is, like, strange. Right. Like you said, Adrian Peterson, he looked amazing. Right. I mean, I just feel that, again, you're talking about if you have a guy who has the threat of throwing the ball deep, why do you want to go with a guy who doesn't have that same threat?
Right. I agree with you. One last question I have before we get out of here. After actually playing the Bengals, obviously the national media has been pretty low on us. And you can be honest, it doesn't matter. I like for people to speak their truth. Do you think that the narrative that the media is giving the Bengals with them winning, 3 games and things of that nature, do you think that that's actually true after playing us, or do you think that there wasn't enough for you to see within that game?
From your starters, I don't think it was enough. Because, again, Geno Atkins didn't play. Right. Who I think is a monster for you guys. Right. I think that he improves the defense by himself alone. I think Carlos Dunlap didn't play either. So, those 2 guys are very key to you when it comes to the guys that when it comes to the starting defense. Yeah. I think you guys may change out. I think you guys may have Pratt actually become your starter I can't remember who the guy was that started in place. But Pratt, I think, came in a little later. I don't know why. Right. But I think he came in a little later. But, I mean, offensively, I think you guys are there. Like I said, again, I like Joe Mixon. Giovanni Bernard, I think you guys may start to get to a point where y'all might end up releasing him, or y'all might sit up there and not really think about him being in y'all plans. Right. Because, he didn't really seem like he was comfortable with the first team offense, so I'm not sure if that is just him not feeling like it's just a preseason, or if he feels that he may not get the touches because Joe Mixon is so good. Right. When it comes, like I said again, when it comes to y'all defense, Sean Williams to me is good, but I think he gets caught out of place a lot. Like, he takes really bad angles when it comes to tackling people. I don't know if that's something that you guys have seen, but he looks like he takes really, really bad angles when it comes to tackling. In regards to y'all secondary, last year, did you guys have a problem with getting beat deep a lot?
We had issues with being beat over the middle. Not necessarily too deep. But our secondary, I probably would say, was the strength of our really bad defense last year. But the person I feel like the 2 people that would get beat the most, I don't think, the first person didn't play, Dre Kirkpatrick, which I think Dre is solid, honestly. But if you were to ask the Bengals fan base, they would probably say, like, he's one of the guys that gets beat in coverage. And me personally, I think Sean Williams is one of those guys that gets caught out of place as well in coverage too. But I don't think that it was a huge issue for us last year. I think the middle of the field and guarding tight ends have always been our Achilles heel.
Well, I personally, I don't think you guys are going to win just 3 games. Right. And it's just me being honest. I mean, you guys got, you guys playing a very tough division. Right. With Pittsburgh and the up-and-coming Browns and, the Ravens. I mean, I have to admit, again, being in D.C., we get to see Ravens games. Miles Boykin and Marquise Brown they look very dangerous.
Right.
So I mean, I don't think you guys are just going to only win 3 games.
Right.
I would have to see you guys' schedule just to confirm. But just even in your own division alone, I don't see you guys coming out of there just winning solely 3 games. I think you might win 3 games just out of your division because, again, you're playing competition that you're used to. So I think you guys may snatch a game from the Browns. You may snatch a game from the Ravens, and you may snatch a game from the
Steelers.
The Steelers, yeah. Right. So I mean, there's no way that I think that you guys are going to, by any stretch of the meaning, go 3-13. I don't see y'all doing that.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I actually think our teams kind of mirror each other because we both kind of play in tough divisions, and we're both, in a sense, kind of in like a prove-it year against these different teams, and we both have, because I just was looking at that and I was thinking about, from your perspective, how is Ezekiel Elliott going to run against that defensive front, man? Like I said, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen and your boy Kerrigan with Sweat, that's going to be sick. So I think we're actually both in very similar standpoints. We just seem to be kind of flip-flop. You guys are really good on defense. Our offense seems like it's going to be the strength of us this year. So, yeah, man, I definitely wish you guys luck this season. I wish we actually played so we could do this again. But yeah, man, hopefully we cross paths again down the line. And I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to hop on here and talk Bengals Redskins. So before we get out of here, if you just let the fan base know where they can find your stuff on YouTube or on social media platforms, and we'll wrap it up.
Hey, yeah, again, John Fortune, host of the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. You can catch me on YouTube under the Frustrated Fan Sports Show. You can catch me on Facebook under John Fortune. You can catch me on Twitter under John E. Fortune. And you can catch me on Instagram under John Fortune 318.
All right, and as usual, I will leave you guys with a who day, all day, every day, and especially on a Sunday.